All right, welcome back in. This is the Coach Mark Gottfried Show, and I've had a lot of amazing guests, and today I'm really excited because I've got a guy that I was able to coach for 1 year at UCLA when I was an assistant coach there. I wish it had been a lot longer, but one of the great players, in my view, that I've ever coached, and also one of the great players that UCLA has ever had. I'm excited today to have John Garfield Bailey, who we all know as Toby Bailey, the great Toby Bailey.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks for having me. I'm finally on the couch.
So let's take everybody back. And, obviously for me and for the UCLA fans, and there'll be a lot of, people that watch this, but, that your freshman year, and we'll back up after that in a second, but let's start off with your freshman year. Unbelievable year for you, for our team, for our program at UCLA. And then we make it all the way to the national championship game. And in that game in Seattle in the Kingdome against the Arkansas Razorbacks, you have one of the great performances for any player, but for a freshman in the national championship game. 26 points, 9 rebounds. UCLA, we won the national championship. But just kind of to start off with, Toby, talk about, that game, that night for you. What an amazing night for you in your career and for the rest of your life.
Yeah, no, that was a special night. I'm glad that I was a freshman and I really didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't realize how much that would affect my entire life after that. And so the magnitude of the moment really wasn't there, as it would have been if I was a senior probably. But that was a special night. We're playing against Arkansas, and their whole thing was 40 minutes of hell. And it was a fast-paced game, and as we were talking about earlier, that's what I kind of came from. Is my high school was kind of patterned after the LMU back in the day, where it was the Hank Gathers and the Bo Kimball and Jeff Fryer, and they would try to outscore their opponent and try to get a shot up within 5 seconds. And so I was very comfortable, since I played that way in high school, playing up and down. And so when Arkansas was up against us and they were trying to press us, and it was all about instinct. It was all about getting pressed, getting the ball, and just letting it go. And so it was a game that was very conducive to my style of play. And I think that's why I was able to flourish so much in that one.
A lot of people won't remember, but your high school senior year in Los Angeles, you were one of the best guards in the whole country. But that year in California, especially Southern California, there was a handful of really good players. That class that you were a part of, Ricky Price goes to Duke, Miles Simon goes to Arizona. I think Cameron Murray was in that class, went to SC, then
Jelani Gardner,
who went to Cal. And there was all of you really good players. And, we're at UCLA, I'm coaching and we're recruiting. And, we kind of in our mind have our favorites. Like, okay, there's this big crop of players, and we've got to get a couple guards out of this group, local guys. But we really wanted you. You were one of the guys, like when we went out and watched players and we're watching all these guys play, and we'd come back and have our meetings. You were always kind of at the top of the list of the guy that we wanted. You kind of fit what we wanted. But talk about that class, because you're growing up in that, all the guys. Yeah. You guys are all buddies. Yeah. You're playing against each other against. And how was that for you?
No, it was great. As you described, some of the best players in that class were all the same position, all the same kind of body types. It was, Ricky Price was, he was ranked super high as a shooting guard, 6'5", could jump, could shoot the jumper, really good player. Jelani Gardner was 6'5", really could kind of do it all. Miles Simon, he was another 6'5" guard that could kind of do it all. We're all from Southern California. We all kind of either played on each other's teams throughout our careers, our young careers, or we would battle against each other. And so we were very familiar with each other, and we were also friends off the court as well. And so there were a handful. I think there were only 4 schools that we were all really thinking about. It was Duke, it was UCLA, it was Arizona, and it was Cal. And, I knew the other guys had those same schools on their target list. And, since my dad went to UCLA, I'm from LA. I grew up playing with Charles O'Bannon and Ed O'Bannon. I knew Tyus. I knew all the other guys. There was no way that I was not going to take that spot right away. And so, a couple of the other guys, they took recruiting trips and they were kind of, stretching the process out. But for me, I think I took one like unofficial visit to UCLA, but as soon as I could commit, I committed. I didn't want to play any games. And, I was fortunate that you guys, wanted me as well. And, it was a perfect fit.
When you're at UCLA and, there's been a lot of coaches through the years and it's a special place for me still. I still love everything about UCLA, but when you're at UCLA, you're trying to find, the best player. Mm-hmm. But then in our view at that time with Jim Herrick as the head coach, we wanted the guys that we felt kind of fit with us too, as far as character and, guys that wanted to get a degree and just wonderful people. Okay. And I can remember, Toby, recruiting you, and we all kind of recruited together, our staff, but we loved your family, like your father. And there's some, delusional parents in the world. And I've had a lot of players who, we used to say they think they're Michael Jordan and their parents think they're better. Yeah. And, but your family was always so grounded. They weren't, they were supportive, they were excited. And so the whole thing kind of fit for us. I can remember sitting in Coach Herrick's office when you committed, and it was ready, like in your dad and your mom and everybody there. I think your brother might have been there that day as well. But we were so excited because, one, we were getting a great player, but then we knew, too, we were getting a great person that really fit UCLA. Because I think UCLA is different than a lot of places, and you want to have that great character guy. So it just ended up being a great fit. But talk about like even your family and going through that process of being recruited, and here comes UCLA and that opportunity to be there, and a little bit from your family's perspective.
Like I said, from day one, I was born on November 19th. And that's like every year, that's like around the USC UCLA football game. And so when I was being born, the story is it was a UCLA USC football game, and my dad was late to the hospital because he wanted to wait and see UCLA win. And so I've been UCLA since day one, and so the process of being recruited and having you guys actually come to my gym and sit in the crowd, and for us that was a dream come true. And it for me, I think that's part of the what's missing in college right now, and what I kind of miss is that kind of organic growth of the different teams, and how you would have in Indiana for Indiana University, you would have the Mr. Indiana would usually go to that school, and you would have the best one or two players that would just dream of going to Indiana, and they would go there. Right? At UCLA, the best players in LA that would just dream of going there. It wasn't about who's going to give me the biggest bag, who's going to promise me this or that. It was, I grew up watching this. This is my dream, and this is what I want to do. And it was just something pure about that. And it saddens me that it's not like that anymore.
Do you remember, Toby? Did you realize at the time? I know you had you were favored UCLA because your father, but I've often said this, and I had Kiki Vandeweghe on, and I've had some other people, but and I didn't really realize it until I got there to UCLA that not only is the basketball program, and at that time we were really good and we were rolling, and that was good, but did you realize even then, I know you were young, by putting your name connected to UCLA, kind of what that did for the rest of your life? Because I believe UCLA produces a great graduate, and I say that because the guys that we had, now that you're older in life and you're adults and you have families and children, I look at a lot of you guys and I say, man, they're wonderful people. Like and not only UCLA, your family obviously had a lot to do with that, but UCLA produces a great product in my view. Did you get that when you were younger? Did not really, or how did you feel about that?
You know what? I don't think I was, I was thinking of it, I didn't have that far of a view out. But that being said, my parents strategically put me in the best situations. They went, there were different high schools that I could have gone to and would have maybe made sense, on the basketball court. But Loyola was the school that, their mantra is be a man for others. They have, different programs that you have to go through while you're at that school where you have to do, mentorship. You have to do, different missions. And so, it was building not just a basketball player, but a student athlete and, just an all around great person. That's what they're trying to produce. And so I think all of the schools that I was targeting, if they didn't have that, that all-encompassing values and tools, I don't think that I would even considered it. So I was fortunate to have UCLA be the school that my dad went to. It's in my backyard, and it had all of those great things, plus a beautiful campus, great weather. It was a dream come true to have all that right here.
Did you realize, Toby, because let me tell you a little bit how when I got to UCLA and I started as a graduate assistant, but, having played at Alabama and been around Alabama, we had great athletes, track athletes and some baseball guys that were really, really good. Obviously, football guys. We had some NFL guys. But football was so dominant there, and basketball was very popular as well. But even as a student athlete, sometimes I didn't even realize there was greatness in other sports because they didn't pay attention as much. Where at UCLA, when I got to UCLA, and all of a sudden, you walk into the Hall of Fame and you realize the men's gymnastics teams with, Peter Vidmar and Mitch Gaylord, then the track and field with FloJo and Jackie Joyner-Kersee, and then football and baseball, and all of the sports, they celebrated all of them. And I like that. I did. For me, it was kind of like, wow, all of a sudden you're around all these amazing, Rayford Johnson walks in, his daughter was playing basketball and volleyball at the time. He walks in and here's a, Olympian gold medal guy that, as a child, you look up and say, that's Rayford Johnson, but he just walks in the office one day. Did you, for you got exposed to so much of the other sports as well.
Yeah, I think, that portion wasn't lost on me because, my dad would preach that from day one. Jackie Robinson is the greatest black man ever to tie a pair of tennis shoes. He would tell me since I was young, and just seeing what the impact he had, not only on the court and the field and the track, but he changed our society. He changed what sports looks like, and so. Him, Arthur Ashe, people that, that transformed, and they went far beyond just their sport, and so I realized that I knew my history, and that's the sad part about today is that, I don't know if these kids, and I'm not necessarily saying that the UCLA students, I'm saying on college as a whole, I don't know if they necessarily respect and acknowledge the history that has come before them. And you could kind of tell by the way they play. Like when we played, we all understood the 4 letters that were across our chest. We understood the importance of that. We understood that we had 10 national championships before us, that there was a certain level of expectation and excellence that we had to live up to. And so every time we played, it was like we have to live up to this. And so, it's like I said, it's a little disheartening that it's not like that anymore. But everything changes. Yeah,
it does. How about this one, Toby? So I remember when my first year at UCLA, and John Wooden had turned 80 that year, and so they had a birthday party for him. And obviously, when you get to be 80 years old, a lot of people start coming back because you don't know exactly how long somebody's going to live. But I can remember going to the Sportsman's Lodge. They had a birthday party for him up in the Valley. And I'm this young guy coming from Alabama, and I'm at UCLA, and I'm already excited. But then I walk in, and it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, Sidney Wicks, Kiki Vandeweghe, Curtis Rowe, Dave Myers, all these guys that when I was younger, and I'm walking around the room a little bit like, holy smokes,
crazy.
There's some dudes here. Like there's some real dudes in this room, like players. So for you as a young guy coming into UCLA, and then over time you began to meet, a lot of those former players and develop relationships with a lot of those guys. How was that for you as a young guy? Because for me, I was like, I could go home like call my mom and dad like, I met Kareem today, and it was like the greatest thing, for me.
It was, kid in a candy shop for me. It was, I would hear all these stories from, about these guys, and to see them, in person, and then for them to, after I was playing, for them to know my name and be, come up to me and say, great game, young fella, and this and that, and give pointers here and there. It was, I appreciated it so much, and I loved every minute of it. And then, to have the players that were even closer to our age that were playing in the NBA at the time that would come back and play in the men's gym against us, and and they would give us special love because we were part of that fraternity of UCLA. It was just nothing like it. To have Reggie Miller come in there and tell you some things, or, you got Mitchell Butler and Don McClain and just Kiki Vandeweghe, and, just people that you really admired, and having them kind of, now be, your peers is it was special.
To set the stage so that people don't understand, most people wouldn't know this, but at UCLA, one of the great things for our players was that usually in the fall, a lot of the NBA guys would come back and they're getting ready for camp. So they've had a couple months of summertime, and now, you get that 1st of September, and here they come. They're all coming back to play pickup games, and, NBA camps start 1st of October. So they had about a month there where there's a gym at UCLA called the men's gym. And I'm going to guess, Toby, if you go back through your career of playing, and you were such a great player, and, got drafted and played in the NBA, and college career was off the charts. But as a competitor, it's like for me when I played, I can remember some of those pickup games as much as I can remember a national championship game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like when you walked in that gym, and all of a sudden, here you are, you're a freshman at UCLA, you're brand new, you're in college, you're excited, and you look over there, and all of a sudden it's Magic Johnson, Byron Scott, Gary Payton. They're the lineup of guys that would all come.
Oh, it's crazy.
That would be from all over the country, pro guys. Talk about that men's gym, those pickup games, Toby, for you, especially your first year.
Yeah, your first year, because I would come up during my, when I was in high school, and I would kind of be on the sideline trying to kind of sneak my way in. And every once in a while after, the courts kind of players started to kind of get tired, and they say, hey, young fella, you could take my spot. And so I might get a game or two in when I was younger. And then to finally be like, playing at UCLA, and now we would have our own team that would, it would be the UCLA guys. And then we'd compete against the NBA teams, the teams that they would put together. And like you said, those games, you come in, you'd see Shaq and Kobe and Sean Kemp and every player that you would be seeing in the NBA would be in the gym. And the crazy thing about those games, Coach, is that when I got to the NBA, and I actually, we were playing the NBA, I get it. It's 82 games. It's a lot of wear and tear on your body. But for the first 3 quarters, it's kind of like, you're going up and down. It's not, super, they're not playing super hard. And for me, as, coming from college, because college, every minute, every possession counts. You got to go hard and leave it all on the court. It was a little weird to me to have that kind of slower pace and kind of like nonchalant first 3 quarters, and then the 4th quarter they would turn it on. The men's gym, those guys, I would see them in the summer, and they would play every game. It was like they're playing to the death. It was because if you lost, first of all, it was bragging rights. They could do whatever they want, and then if you lost, a lot of times you would have to sit out sometimes. And so those games to 5 or whatever we were going to do, 5, 7, every point counted. And I venture to say those games were probably more competitive than a lot of the NBA games, the official NBA games.
There's no question. So how about this one? So, and I've said this to Magic a couple times. I've seen him, we've crossed paths, and I always kind of give him grief about this. But the reputation that Magic Johnson had in the men's gym, and again, you're talking about pickup games with, it's like an NBA All-Star game, first of all, with our players, with our UCLA players are playing in pickup games with James Worthy, you name them. They're all there playing one day or another. They're in and out. But I used to tell Magic, the word was Magic, when the game came down to the wire, you were going to call he was going to call a foul. He was calling a foul, and he was getting the ball back to make sure his team would win.
100%. You had to go up against Magic. You had to be up 2 or 3 points in order to win. But we knew that. We knew that was the game. We knew you had to, like, dude, we're only up by 1. It's a close game. We're not going to win this if it goes down to 1, because you knew he was going to call something. But I mean, he deserved it. He built his reputation. He can call that. We weren't going to say, I wasn't going to say nothing. I wanted to play in the NBA, so I didn't want to get blackballed by Magic. So, but a lot of fun, so much fun.
Who in those games, Toby, that stood out? I mean, obviously Magic's Magic, and in my view, I don't care what anybody says. He's a top 5 forever. I don't care who they play. And Magic Johnson, I'm starting a franchise with that guy. Yeah. But maybe outside of him, or if it's him, but who stood out to you as somebody like for you that you kind of looked and you watched and said, man, I'm gonna learn from that guy. I want to, there's things about his game that you kind of might have said, God, I want to get really good at this, like him. Obviously, Reggie Miller was such a great shooter, but some of the other guys for you, who would some of those guys would have been for you back in those days?
Let me think. I'd say there were a ton of guys that I would take in it. And Magic, we're talking about Magic. Magic actually influenced, on a tangent, he influenced the way I kind of looked at playing. He came to a camp one time when I was a kid, and he said every time, every summer he would work out with his peers, with the Isaiah Thomases and the Jordans and whatnot, and he would try to steal one move from that they would do successfully and try to add it to his repertoire. And so that's why, he took the Kareem hook shot, and then, in that famous game, he was able to shoot the hook shot and add that to his repertoire. And, so he said, I know everyone in basketball has an ego, but don't be afraid to take stuff from other experts that are around you at all time. And so because of that, I always was looking for other players and seeing what they did better than I did, and seeing, how does he do this? And I wasn't afraid to ask them, how do you do this crossover? Or how do you get your shot to do that and whatnot? And so, for someone that was looking at the game the way I was, to be in the gym with that many amazing players, I mean, I was just trying to take a little bit from every different player. And so, it was the Mitchell Butlers and Don McClain's shot, how quickly he got his shot off. And, those are the guys, the UCLA guys that were in the NBA were the guys that I had the most familiarity with and I could kind of go up and really talk to. So those were the ones that kind of mentored me. But the ones that were I think most memorable were the ones that didn't come in all the time. The ones that, like the Shaqs that would come in once or twice a summer, and you would say, okay, I understand what the league is going through with this guy. I get it. I understand why other teams are getting players just to try to stop him. And so like him, Sean Kemp came in one time and was the most freakish 6'11", 40-inch vertical. To see that in person as a young kid, you're like, what is going on? Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Kobe would come in, he would come in once or twice a summer. It wouldn't be often, but when he came, it would just be a whisper that would go around the campus, and you would see students start to kind of skip class, and all of a sudden, I think he had the biggest impact. The Kobes, the Shaqs, I think when they actually were in the building, because they weren't there all the time, it would be packed in there. There would be people trying to keep the students out of there, because it would be pandemonium.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy? So I don't know if you know this story, and this will be interesting for you. I don't even know if you and I have ever talked about this, but your freshman year, Toby, in 1990, it was 1994-95 season, and 95, we won the national championship. You were a freshman. But we were probably, I can't remember off the top of my head. I should have done my homework, but maybe 6 or 8 or 10 games into the year, and we went to play at LSU. Mm-hmm. I think this is right, and you might correct me if I get it wrong, but I can remember, I'm pretty sure, that we were in a hotel And at that time, you weren't in the starting lineup.
No, I wasn't.
J.R. Henderson was another freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And, we kind of started the year off, and J.R. was kind of playing the, we call the three, the kind of a wing position for us. And then we were bringing you off the bench.
Yep.
And I can remember, it was like yesterday, I can remember this. I remember Jim Herrick, the head coach, our head coach, who I've always told people, basketball-wise, he's a little bit of a savant for me. He can see things sometimes that other people can't. Mm-hmm. But I remember him saying to us, for us to really take off and be the best possible team we can be. And we were winning. It wasn't like we were losing.
And
we had beaten
was,
Kentucky.
And JR was amazing.
And JR,
he's amazing,
talented, 6'10" wing player that was as skilled as anybody in the country, and all that. But I remember Jim saying, we got to put Toby in the starting lineup. And I think it was that night, maybe at LSU.
It was that game.
And we put you in the lineup.
Yep.
And I remember coming out, too, because later I coached at Alabama. We played at LSU all the time. They had the big tiger in the cage down there. As we came from the locker room, you had to pass by this big old live tiger, in a cage. But Jim Herrick saw it, even though we were winning, and said, we got to get Toby in the lineup. And then we can bring Cameron Dollar in off the bench, and we can rotate our perimeter guys with, one sub for the perimeter. And then JR becomes a sub for Ed O'Bannon and George Zedek, and we can kind of play that way. And we really only played 7 guys. But he had to get you in the lineup. Talk about that, maybe for you. I don't know if you can remember all that, but
I remember
you entered into the lineup, and we really did. We took off as a team. We went from being really good to, like, all of a sudden we're really good now. We took another step up.
Yeah, I in the beginning of that season, I don't know if you were in the meeting, but it was like during the summer before I came. I asked Coach, because that was another one of the reasons why I really wanted to go to UCLA, which is kind of counterintuitive to the kids nowadays. But when we sat in the meeting to kind of get recruited, I remember we talked about playing time and starting, and he said, I'd be a fool not to play my best players. I can't promise you a starting position, but I'd be a fool not to play the best players. And that's all that my dad and I usually a player would be like, you can't promise me a starting spot, and I'm going to this other school. But for us, we were like, that's all we can ask. And so after that meeting, I remember I asked Coach, what do I need to do to get in the starting lineup? And he said, you have to become a better three-point shooter, a consistent three-point shooter, and you have to become the best defender on the court. And I said, all right. So all summer, that's all I did was take threes. Because in high school, I know but I would play like the 5, on defense. I was the tallest guy on the team, and so the 3-point shot was something that I could do, but it wasn't my greatest attribute. And so because of that, it took that whole year, especially coming in as a scoring, with a scoring mentality, to really kind of, I think, find my role and know, okay, Toby, you're not gonna, first couple games, I might have been trying to do too much and trying to score and do this and that. But I think by that point in the season, I realized, if I'm gonna play, I have to defend the best player on the team, and I have to just hit open threes and then get out on the break. And so it was fortunate we played against LSU, which I know, but they had Randy Livingston, who was like one of the best point guards in the nation, and then they had Ronnie Henderson, who was the number 1 ranked 2 guard in the class ahead of me. And I was fortunate enough to play with him at ABCD camp, which was an all-star camp during the summer, when I was a sophomore and he was a junior, and he was the number 1 player in the nation at that point as a 2 guard. And so I was able to go up against them. So when we played against each other, I was familiar. I wasn't afraid. I was like, I know I've gone against you for a week and a half, 2 weeks. I know I can play against you. And so when I stepped in there, and it was a transformative game for me, like you said, and I'll never forget that, because I had a really good game. I think I hit I don't know how many threes, but I hit a bunch of threes that was kind of, it was, and once I did that, I think Coach kind of saw, okay, he defended one of the best 2 guards in the nation, and he hits threes, like he's ready now. And so for me, that was a special game.
And it really changed our team because our team went from good, in my view, to being great. And he knew that, and I've always respected his ability to see it. You mentioned the ABCD camp, and I can remember, Toby, and I've told you this before, you attended the Nike camp. And so, you know, nowadays the Nike camp, the ABCD camp, those have kind of fallen off to the wayside for now. It's all AAU basketball. That's all, you know, young people play. You get on a summer traveling team and you go to all the events and play. But when you were in high school, you had the camps.
Those were the two big camps.
You had two big ones, and all of the best players in the country went there. They all went. And I can remember at the in Indianapolis, you made the All-Star team of the camp. And so the All-Star game, the camp was played, I think of that year, maybe it was at Indiana University, Purdue, or IUPUI, one of those. You had all the games. But the All-Star game was televised. And it was
and that's the reason
campus.
why I wanted to go to that camp instead of ABCD, because it was televised. I was like, I want to be on that televised game.
And you did. And so you make the All-Star team. So we go into this gym, and it's kind of like a small, like a large high school gym. But, you know, it's a gym there on campus, and they got the bleachers, and they're packed. I mean, the bleachers just packed with fans and people and coaches, all the coaches around the country. And you had already committed to UCLA, so you were on our team. You were with us. We were together. And I remember sitting in the crowd. You had a great game too. You played so well in that game against the best players in the country. Those were all the best players.
Kevin Garnett,
all of them.
Allen Iverson,
Ron Mercer.
Rafe LaFrance. Yeah, there were some
dudes.
studs.
Yeah, there were some dudes in that game. And you played really, really well. And I can remember I was like a proud pop. I was in the crowd. I had like my chest poked out like, oh, yeah, we got him. We got that guy. We got that guy coming. But you played so well, and it just kind of, I think that day elevated your, the way people viewed you. They always thought of you as a really, really good player, one of the best players in the country. Yeah. But I think that day for you, I think everybody around the country had a different impression of you after that day because you played so well in that game.
And I think, I mean, as a player, players would lie and say that's not the case, but you really don't know how good you are until you're against that top competition that you're reading. You know, nowadays it would be on the internet watching, but you know, back then it was reading the magazines and saying, hey, who is this Kevin Garnett guy? Is he really that good? Or who is this Ron Mercer guy? Is he, you know, should he be ranked number 1 or 2? Like, and so you see these guys and you say, okay, well, you know, we'll see where we line up when we kind of going head to head, but you really don't know until you actually are in the same room together. And so to have a game like that on that stage, I think it solidified it not only for other people, but for myself. Like, okay, like, you know, I belong here. This is, you know, where I should be. And so it was, that was a great game.
Where do you think, Toby, because I think great players, which, you know, you were a great player, great players, in my view, have they have a self-confidence. They have a level that, you know, I can do this. I'm good enough. But then there's also like I don't know if courage is the right word, but they're kind of not afraid to fail. Like you're going to go for it no matter what. Like for you, you always had that. You always had a confidence. It wasn't an arrogance. There wasn't nothing about you that was arrogant, but you had this great confidence that when you stepped on the floor, you could play with anybody. Yeah. And kind of where do you think maybe that came from for you? Because that's a great attribute.
I think, oh my goodness. I think it started from when I was a kid, like a little first time playing, and I would get butterflies going to the game and bubble guts and my dad, I'd be like, I don't like this feeling. What's going on, Dad? And he'd say, you know, those are your butterflies. They're gonna give you wings.
Wow, isn't that great?
And
I love it, Toby.
Okay. I get emotional because it's goodness. Okay. It's how I lived my whole life. Like it's being comfortable in that uncomfortableness is where, like, that's where growth comes. And I live my whole life like that. And so, get it together. Yeah, so I think that it's super transformative to me, that moment, because I now, even today, the way I live, being like, if I don't feel if I don't feel butterflies every day, I'm not having a good day. So it's that's what spurred me to become a sports agent, and then do that for 11 years, and now I'm in a totally different profession that I'm the only one. I would say, like, when I'm in these huge conferences and I meet all these different, and for reference, I work in finance now, but everyone I come in contact with, no one has my background. They've all been to Wharton Business School, to Harvard Business School, and, they've been in finance for 30 years and whatnot. And so for me to have the audacity to actually go into this profession and feel like I could succeed, it was the fact that that's my comfort zone, is feeling uncomfortable. And so I knew if it does give me butterflies, this is the right place. I'm going to grow. I'm going to be better. And it's really spurred me and enabled me to kind of do a lot of, really good things because I am comfortable there.
Talk to me, Toby, about, and I appreciate your transparency, because your dad, I mentioned this earlier, I've coached a lot of players, and some parents are just goofy. They just get goofy. They just do. I mean, it's just part of it. I go to high school games now, and some parents think their kid is way better than he is, which is fine. That's parents. But your dad and your mother too, you're both your parents, but your father, to me, first of all, he's a big guy, he had the big mustache back then. Big guy,
Football
he had a
player,
great presence.
Big John,
your dad had this great presence about him, but there had to be so many, like you mentioned.
You're trying to get me to cry again. That's what you're trying to do. That's where you're going into my dad.
But I love your dad. But there had to be, when you were growing up, those so many lessons where, because your dad was, he kind of got it. He did get it, as far as wanting his child to have the best career, and all parents do, but nurturing you along the way and teaching you those lessons. He had to be a special impact for you.
No, he was great. For my brother and I both, he was always there. He was a psych major in college, and so he would always play these psychological games with us, and you don't realize until after you look back, but he would do stuff like, I remember we had a carpool, and one of the kids came in and he had some candy, and he said, it was 7 a.m, and he was like, hey, my brother's name is Ryan, but we call him Moose. He's like, Moose, Toby, you want some candy? And my dad, instead of saying, no, they can't have candy, he said, oh no, their bodies are temples. They would never eat candy this early. Like, they'd look at their body, they're race cars. They wouldn't put that cheap gasoline in their tank. And so, we're in the middle of about to take the candy, and we're like, yeah, I guess our body is a temple and we don't eat candy this early. But, once, those little, mental games that he would play, it really made us who we were, and it made us mentally strong. And that's, how it is. I was physically gifted, but the mental aspect, a lot of people are physically gifted. It's the mental aspect that is the differentiating factor for, whether you're going to be a good player, a great player. And so I think that for me, that his tutelage in that aspect was what really made us who we were.
Let's go back real quick I want to go back to the national championship game, because, for the UCLA fan, they're going to remember all this, but a lot of people don't. But our point guard, Ty Sidney, in my view, probably in that NCAA tournament, 1995, I thought he was probably playing as good or better than any player in the entire tournament of all 64 teams. Tyus was just unbelievable. He was amazing. And in the semifinal game, we're playing against Oklahoma State, and he took a hard fall and, fell to the ground and put his hand on the ground. And little did we know at the time, but, broke his wrist. And, he wanted to play on a Monday night national championship game. And we're playing against a team that's going to press us for 40 minutes. They're going to pick us up full court and 40 minutes of hell, like you mentioned. And now we don't have our point guard. He tried to play, played about a minute or two, and then he basically said, I'm no good. We shot him up with cortisone, and his hand was about as
my God.
It was like limp.
Yeah.
He couldn't even move it. But we bring in Cameron Dollar. Here's our backup point guard, and we're now a perimeter player short as far as even our substitution. So you're going to have to play. Everybody's going to have to play a little bit more than normal. And it's the national championship game, and now our point guard, who's played better than anybody in tournaments, out. And now you're in the locker room, or even in those first minutes of the game, even though you're young, you're a freshman, what is going through your mind at that point? And when we put Cameron Dollar in the game, a lot of people forget, they stole the ball from him twice. Before he blinked, they stole it. Clint McDaniel stole it and laid it in, stole it, laid it in. And there is no option. There's no other option. We don't have another player to go to. It's it. And so what is going through your mind as a player at that moment on that stage? We're shorthanded. And all of a sudden, here comes Toby Bailey, just rose up out. And Ed O'Bannon was pretty good, by the way, that night, too. He had 30 points and 17 rebounds. But you're 26 points and 9 rebounds, too. But what's going through your mind, Toby, in that moment when we're shorthanded playing against Arkansas?
You know what? I think we were so locked in that, nothing went to – like, looking back, like I hadn't watched that video in, honestly, 25 years, 25, 30. I had not watched that video. And I watched it with my kids one day, a couple years. I think it might have even been during COVID. And watching it, even though I know the outcome, when he got the ball stolen a couple times, right, I was like, oh my God, we were in trouble, but we were so locked in. I should have been worried even nights before, because we knew Tyus was injured. Most, I think, if you weren't super locked in, people would be asking Tyus every 5 minutes, are you going to be able to play? Are you okay? But I think we were just so ready, and we had so much confidence in everyone else that we knew we were going to be okay, with or without Tyus, even though he was a huge component. We knew how good Cameron was also. So I think even though he got the ball stolen a few times, we knew how good Cameron was. Maybe the rest of the nation at that point didn't, but we knew he went up against Tyus every day. They would battle. We knew how that he could carry the load. And and so when he came in and once he caught his stride, and I like I said, them pressing us the whole time, when you're up against that type of pressure, all you can do is react. So you're playing a game that you've been playing since 4 years old, and it's just reactions then. You don't have time to think. And so I think it actually helped us that they were pressing us, and we just had to play. As far as the conditioning aspect was, I think that year we were probably the best conditioned team, and that's attributed to you guys as coaches. You had us in the best shape possible, and so I remember at halftime, Coach Herrick said, don't worry about subs. You can, you got all summer to rest. And so, when he told us that, we knew what we were up against, and I think that was the main thing. We were just so locked in and believed in everybody else so much.
Going back to that year, too, we had played UConn in the Elite Eight game up in Oakland, and they wanted to run with us, too. And I think the final score was something like 102 to 96 or something like that. But we felt so confident, if you're going to try to run with us,
good
you
luck.
better brace yourself, because we can do it.
Yeah.
Talk about, Toby, again, the UCLA fan will get this, and maybe the whole country, but, Ed O'Bannon had came into UCLA. He had tore his knee up, and, really tore it up in a horrible way. It took him a couple years to get back. Even the year before we won it, he was good, but he wasn't great. And we all knew that Ed O'Bannon at that time was special. He was special. But that last year, your freshman year, Ed took off to another level. Another level. He was the Ed that we all thought Ed when he was in high school coming in, because he had the really bad knee injury. But and I used to say, and we had during COVID, you'll remember this, we had a phone call where we all got on a phone call. It was all of us from the 95 team, all the players, the managers, the coaches. We had everybody on there. And it was still a little bit to me that it was like Ed O'Bannon was a little bit like E.F. Hutton. Like when he talked, everybody listened.
100%.
Everybody stopped.
100%.
Even on the phone call. That was 25, 30 years after the championship. We're all on this phone call. But when Ed talked, everybody got quiet.
Yeah.
But you're a young player. You're a freshman.
Yeah.
Ed O'Bannon now is a fifth-year senior because he had the knee injury and he had a red shirt. And his game took off. How was that for you? Because in my view, he was the National Player of the Year that year. God, and not only a great player, but probably one of the best people.
And leaders. Yeah.
And leaders. I mean, but you talk about a genuine, pure heart.
Oh, yeah.
Ed O'Bannon to me is one to this day. Talk about that for you as a young freshman.
Well, I don't know if you know their history, but I was, I would work out with Artesia when I was, which is the high school that Ed and Charles O'Bannon went to. And so I would work out with them when I was in the 8th grade because I was potentially going to go there. And so I would see Ed all the time. I would see Charles all the time. We'd work out together. And I ended up not going there because of the distance. But I would go to those high school games when he was the #1 player in the nation. And there was one game in particular where he came down, someone tried to take a charge on him, and he jumped completely over the kid. Completely over the kid. I'm not lying. There's probably footage out there. And dunked the ball. People were running on the court in a normal game. It wasn't an all-star game. It was a normal game. And after I saw that, I was like, I'm going wherever that guy is going to college. I'm following him. And so, I did follow UCLA, but you're in high school, you got your own life, so I wasn't following as closely as you could you would think. So when I saw him my freshman year, that was the Ed that I remember from high school. Yeah. Because the last time I really was up close and personal with him was when he was jumping over people, and so I remember that athleticism. So it was beautiful to see him able to get that back and actually show the world like how good he should have been, and really special. I always tell the story of how he was such a great leader, and how he dunked on me one time, and I remember I took a charge in practice. I don't know if you remember that, but he dunked on me and came down with the ball, and I'm on the ground, and he just threw the ball in my chest. And I looked over at the coaches, and Coach Harris was like, "What do you want me to do?" That's Ed O'Bannon, you better get up. And I was like, okay. But just that story, it set the tone, like, okay, like they're the leaders, like fall in line, like if you got to be tough to be on this team. And so he just set the tone with his leadership, and like you said, he's so soft-spoken, and so when he actually does say something, it's just so much more impactful, because he's not the kind of guy that's going to be talking and hoorahing all the time, and so and what he's done after sports with the NIL and changing the landscape of college sports. I mean, it had to be him. Like he's just such a pure. He just has such a pure heart. He's doing it for all the right reasons. There was no money grab, that he was going after. He got nothing from the deal, and it was only to help his fellow, ball players and student athletes. And the sad part is that no one, like I was an agent for 11 years. And so I was at the at the beginning of the NIL and whatnot. And I talk to kids nowadays, they probably don't even know who Ed O'Bannon is. And it's so sad that he's the reason why you live the way you live and you have the opportunities that you have. And it just, like I said, it irks me. I'm sounding like the old guy that's like, but it irks me because they have it at their fingertips where they can look up. Like I knew my history about Jackie Robinson, the Arthur Ashe, the Ralph Bunches, and we had to look through the encyclopedia to find that stuff. Like they have it at their fingertips where they can look up who created NIL, and it's Ed O'Bannon, and they could look at his old. Not only was he, transformative there, but he was the number one player in the nation in high school, the number one player in the nation in college. Like, he was a stud, and I hope someday his story comes out. And
I hope so too. And he's one of the best. I tell people all the time, every player in America, male or female, they should give like a percentage to Ed O'Bannon. You go back and let's kind of switch gears to NIL right now. Like in college sports, student athletes now can get paid by using their name, image, and likeness. Yep. And I look back, like even in your era, like even you coming out of high school, and the sad part about it for me, and I know things change, and I don't want to sound like the old fart that you can't adapt.
I'm bringing
times.
You to my world.
I know. Yeah. We're all there, Toby. But like you chose UCLA, for all of the right reasons. Yeah. One, the basketball portion was huge, but then the history of UCLA, the academics at UCLA, what the degree from UCLA is going to do for the rest of your life in Los Angeles. There were so many components as why UCLA was the right choice for you. And I go back, like even if you were in high school and all of a sudden, UCLA says, hey, we'll give you, $500,000 a year. And then all of a sudden UNLV says, we'll give you $1 million. And then I think what happens is, and I'm glad kids are being able to make money. You should have been able to make, we all should have. They were using your name, image, and likeness. People were selling your jersey in the bookstore, Toby Bailey, your number. But it just kind of takes away from the purity of, in my view, what college sports is all about. I get it. I like it. I'm glad that guys are they're able to make money, men and women. I'm not a big fan of the transferring without sitting out. Maybe one time, but then after that, you got to go back and sit out. But it just is such a different landscape now, and we've lost some of those things. And do you feel that way?
Oh, 100%. We've lost a lot, and all money's not good money. And I just hope that if these kids do make a money decision, that they're utilizing that money to be a really good head start on life and something that can kind of allow them to live, like a king for their entire life. And it's upsetting because once you get our age, you understand that, $250,000, it's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. $250,000 is a ton of money, but it goes like this. Like it really, unless you're very smart with it, it goes like this. So to make a decision, a life decision, where you might pick a short-term fix, on a college that might not be the best for you. It might not, for that amount of money, it's changed a lot. I think it's changed the relationship you have with your coaches too.
It's very
people
transactional.
don't. It's very transactional. It's I'm not the wet-eared kid that believes that there wasn't some sort of benefit for you guys to get good players, and there was a business aspect of it even back then. But that being said, you knew pretty much we were going to be there 4 years. I really felt as a player that you guys were invested in us, that you were trying to not only create the best basketball players that you could, but also create great men that you would put out into the world. And it was really that feeling of love. And that's why I still am very close to you. I'm very close to Coach Herrick, to Coach Rowe, to Coach Lav, like all my ex-coaches from UCLA. I'm very close to you guys still because I do feel that love, and we have that that bond. Once it's a business, the coach, even if he wants to have that bond, he has to make a business decision, and to protect his own feelings and mental health, he has to make it business, because he knows I'm going to invest in this kid, and then if he gets a higher offer next year and leaves me, I'm going to be crushed, and that's going to happen year after year after year, and mentally I can't take that. So now we're just going to, I'm going to treat it like a business transaction. I'm going to pay you, you do your job, and we'll see what happens from there. And that is the part that's sad.
I go back and they've honored a couple of the teams I had at Alabama, and I went back this last couple of years, and a couple of the guys I had coached who ended up being really good players for us at Alabama. And, we went to the Elite Eight and all these things, but a couple of the guys were like, Coach, they didn't play a lot as a freshman.
Yeah.
They may have been like when you were a freshman, maybe like a Chris Johnson who wasn't playing as much then. Now, he did later, and we had Oma Givens back then. But those guys today, there's a pretty good likelihood they're gone. They're out.
Gone.
If I don't play as a freshman,
they're gone. They're gone for sure.
And some of the guys I coached at Alabama said, Coach, I wouldn't have been there my second year.
Yeah.
I would have left.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to sit out a year, so I stayed. And then the answer sometimes is, and you get this now, but the guys like that, the answer to the equation is get better.
Yeah.
Just get better.
Yeah.
And that's the way life is, in my view, is you're faced with a tough, challenging situation. I can't always run somewhere else. I have to face it. I have to find a way to get it done. I've got to find a way to get better. And most of the guys back then, that kind of fueled it was the fuel that said,
100%.
okay, I'm not sitting on the bench next year.
Yep.
I'm playing. And so this summer, I'm going to bust my balls. I'm going to get out there and be really good.
Yep.
And so we've lost that a little bit. And the guys that now can just bounce around. Alabama had a guy last year. They went to the Final Four. It was his fourth school. I mean, fourth.
Yeah.
4 schools.
They're hired guns. And so I think it hurts not only it not only hurts the player, but it hurts the product that you're putting on the floor, because fans, they want to be invested in a team. They want, that's why the NBA, in my opinion, was so good back in the day, because you knew what the Boston Celtics were going to look like. You knew what the Lakers were going to look like for years. There might be a few players that change in and out, but like you could really get invested in those teams. And so now when it's all about who paid them the most money to come to their school, they're there 1 year. If they get a higher offer next year, they're going there. It's hard for you to really get invested in into that player. And so that's what kind of has changed with college sports.
You'd have made a lot of money.
Oh my goodness!
You'd have made a lot of money.
But I might not. I might not have made the right. I would have definitely probably left and for a higher offer, and my life would not be as happy as it is now, because it's just there's something about staying and having a family to kind of always go back to.
And it's also, I think that we've lost the lesson, like I mentioned, of guys having to get better. I mean, I think we can always find somewhere else that I can play, but a lot of times it's not the answer as far as becoming the very best player you can be.
Yep.
And, learning how to fight through tough situations, and then you're going through a hard situation, and I'm going to find a way to get through it. And then, later in life, it's going to be marriage, relationships, jobs. You may have a job one day where it's not going the way you want it to be. And your first reaction, now we've taught young people indirectly that, okay, if it's not working, just go somewhere else.
Yep.
Just always go somewhere else. There's always an answer somewhere else. And sometimes the best answer is stay right where you are and just get better and improve. And so for me, and I've had Tyler Hansborough, he was on the show, we talked about it, and just that, we're losing that ability to teach a young person how to fight through difficult times, because it's not always going to be easy.
No.
Life is not. So we've lost that a little bit. Would you agree?
100%. It's the grit and grit. I mean, they've done studies where the biggest proponent to you succeeding is if you have grit, and that's in any profession. And so if you don't have that grit, and we're not honing it and teaching it and learning it, then whatever you do in life, you're not going to be successful, because like you said, there's always an easier way out. There's always another opportunity, that is an easier path. And if you're always taking the easy path, like I said before, all the good stuff is beyond the hard work, is beyond the uncomfortableness. And so if you never go through that uncomfortableness, you're never going to get to the prize.
Toby, did you enjoy, and obviously you played in the NBA, you played overseas, you had a 10 or 11, 12-year career of playing basketball after college, and then you and Mitchell Butler, but you guys went in as agents. So now here comes you as an agent. Did you enjoy that part of it? Was that something you enjoyed at that time?
You know what? I actually really enjoyed it. When we first started, And so the reason why I wanted to become an agent, I had 3 of the biggest agents in the game when I was playing. No shade on them, but I just felt like I wasn't a guy that needed much attention. I just wanted you to kind of make sure you when it was time to negotiate or to get a contract, you answered the phone, called me back, and just shot it to me straight. And I just kind of noticed that unless they have good news to tell you, they're not going to answer the phone. And so there'll be weeks that I wouldn't talk to my agent, and they almost make you feel like you work for them when it's really the other way around. And so because of that, I felt like there needed to be a champion on that side of the game. And so, I decided to become an agent. And in our, in that world, there's a lot of kids that, from single parent households, they need the big brother mentorship. And so myself and Mitchell Butler, who is my partner, us, having gone through it, since we were kids and actually reaching our goal to play at the highest level, we had a lot of experience that we were able to hopefully pass on to the next generation. And so in the beginning of when I was an agent, that was something that I think was needed. And it felt really good knowing that I was mentoring kids, that we were putting them in situations to gain generational wealth and changing their lives and their families' lives forever. That was the rewarding part of it. But, as time went on, it just got, as you could tell by the way I talk sometimes, the game got different. That mentorship was something that they were not looking for. Mm-hmm. It was all about who was going to pay them the most money to go to have them come to their agency. And, then with NIL, God bless Ed, but even talking to Ed, he says this is not what he envisioned when he was going, going for the ruling. But with new NIL rules, we were having to recruit kids at such a young age because you could sign them to a marketing contract before you sign them to a player agent agreement later. And so you would have to, recruit 14-year-olds, which is a creepy and weird thing for me as an ex-player. And, I wanted them to become, it went from the beginning, them feeling, them and their parents feeling good about the fact that we would wait until the very end to kind of approach them, because they would say, hey, I appreciate you respecting my kid's innocence and letting him be innocent for as long as possible and let him concentrate on just being a kid and playing ball, and they would respect that. To by the end, it was like you would talk to them and they'd be like, where were you when I was 14? Yeah. You didn't believe in me and this and that. And I'm like, I thought you were a good player, but it's you were a kid. Like it's so creepy to be recruiting. Yeah. And like I said, no shade to the agents out there that might be having to do that, but it just wasn't for me.
Yeah. Well, I think for you, Toby, whatever you do, and you're in finance now, but you're the guy that it doesn't matter what field you're in. You could go do anything you wanted to do, and I think that you're going to be successful. And you are successful and going to always be because of who you are.
I appreciate that.
And, I have so many memories, Toby, of, that one year I was with you. I left to become a head coach after that year. And so, you went on and had a great career. I think you were 3-time first team all Pac-10 back then, or Pac-12, whichever it was at that time. And then you had this great career. But I probably will always have this image, in my mind of the one play in the national championship game where the ball came off the back of the rim, and, we had kind of beat the press, and you rose up, and I don't know if your eyeballs were looking at the rim, but you were awfully high up there. And you just got it and laid it back in there. And it's an image, that it will never be erased. It was just and I tell people all the time, when you win a national championship, all of our teams at UCLA were good. We were in the NCAA tournament every year. We had gone to the Elite Eight with Don McLean and Tracy Murray and all the guys, then we had great teams. But when you win it, the whole thing, you develop, there's a different connection, a different bond between everybody, because you shared we all shared such a phenomenal moment in our lives that
100%.
was so good. So I just want to say, man, I'm proud of you. Love you. I think you're a great player, but just as important, a great person, and your family. I love your father, one of the best. But anyway, I just want to say thanks, man, for making an effort to come. It's a lot of fun.
Man.
And
I appreciate you having me on.
Yep.
Definitely, I would not have missed this. I know we had a problem coordinating it for a little bit, but you were always a big part, even though, and it blows my mind. You said 1 year there. It seems like it was longer, right?
Yeah,
that's mind blowing. But you were a big portion of molding me into who I am, and so I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Toby. So it's been great, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No
man.
worries.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.